Hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm very well. How are you?
Not too bad, thank you. What a glorious plant you got behind you.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you. I can't see it on my screen, but yeah. It's been growing for quite a while. Yeah.
Is it a pandemic plant?
You know what? It's actually pre-pandemic.
Okay.
Pre-pandemic.
You were on it before everyone
Uh,
else got outside.
yeah. Yeah.
Amazing.
Been going for a while. There's many more down that side as well.
Wow. Okay, let's talk about Hard to Reach. It's your debut film and it's great. I wanted to ask you for the people who are still haven't seen it, how would you describe it?
Yeah, so Hard to Reach, it's a coming of age drama. It's a story about a boy and a man. The man's called Maury and the boy's called Jackson. They have a very unique relationship. They're brought together because Maury is Jackson's mentor in an educational setting. And we meet them at the end of the school year, approaching the summer holidays. And they've been together for about a year and a half now. So there's a lot of backstory and a lot of pressure been building up between their relationship. And we meet them on the last day of school, and they're traveling from Birmingham to London on a photography trip, but they don't make it there.
Right. And so this is actually based on your own experience, right? Can you tell me how much of your experience did you put in the film?
Yeah, quite a lot. I mean, there's specific big scenes that didn't happen in real life. But like there was an incident on a train, for example, that happened in real life with one of my students, and I took the feeling of what I felt, and I took the emotions that I sensed from the passengers on board the train, and I sort of distilled that, and then put it into more of a heightened scene that would work for a film, and take influences from elsewhere. So it's kind of like I think my experiences have underpinned everything in the film, but I've just sort of shifted them, sort of like yeah, a few degrees more in different areas. But yeah, it's kind of the through line is there. I did that job for 7 years. I mentored various students, and yeah, it was a fascinating, challenging time, and I always wanted to revisit it in narrative form.
And I have to say, the scene on the train feels so real. Like as a viewer, I could really relate to be on both sides of the situation, where like you're annoyed, but you also understand what's going on, and it's not as bad as that man makes it to be. But anyway, I wanted to ask you, how much of yourself did you put in the mentor, and why is he so anxious?
Yeah, a good question. Again, I think quite a lot of me is in there, and not me now, maybe me then. And I think, yeah, I can recall and cast my mind back personally. I think I was at a point where, those early years of sort of like approaching adulthood, and what you think you should be doing at a certain age, what society sort of said you should be doing. You have these pressures, external pressures, and sometimes they manifest themselves in different ways. And I think where I was at that time, I was also in that job, which is what I want to explore further with this character, is that I was in that job where I was doing something very good. I was, in a very simplistic sense, I was doing good for society by being in that role. But I was because I did it for a period, I became very frustrated in that role because it wasn't giving me creative enjoyment as what acting and filmmaking does. So I was in this sort of push and pull between I'm doing something good here, but what I want is over there, and how do I leave? and and that was a difficult decision. And I wanted to employ that into Maury as well, where he's got this sort of he's pulled. He's kind of like he's with this student Jackson, and he wants to do so much for him, but he's also causing him a lot of frustration and bringing out trigger points in his own sort of like emotional disposition. So yeah, I think in a roundabout sense, I tried to hark back to ways I was feeling back then and imbue the character of Maury with that, but take him on a different journey.
And I wanted to ask you, obviously, it's hard to translate 7 years of your life into a film, but it helped that you were one of the actors in the film. Otherwise, I wanted to ask you, what was the main challenge in kind of translating your personal experience into this short film?
Yeah, so that was when I was writing the script and when I was developing. So I was fortunate enough to get onto this BFI short film school, which all took place online, and they were helping first-time writers write their first short film script. And one of the biggest challenges I faced, and I kind of, one of the mentors on that scheme really sort of said to me quite bluntly, but in a good way, was I was trying to be so honest and trying to be so respectful to the young people I was depicting, the truth of the situations me and my students went through. And where I kind of came into a bit of a corner, and where it just wasn't entertaining, it wasn't a story. And it was that balance of, and the mentor said to me, she says, Darryl, you're not making a documentary. You're making a film. It needs to be entertaining. It's a story. And it was just having that, I was so wrapped up with trying to be authentic to the point where it was quite restrictive. So I think stepping away from that, knowing that, you know what, I lived that life, that period, and I have the onus to take that period and shift it so it can affect people in another way. Yeah. That's
interesting. And when you talked about entertaining, it made me think of that beautiful, liberating dancing scene in your film. Why did you want to have that scene in the film? And obviously, I'm imagining that was not part of what happened to you.
Believe it or not, that did not happen.
I was wishing it did.
Yes. Yeah, I never danced with my students. But no, I think it was quite, I was inspired by Small Acts, a BBC series written and directed by Steve McQueen. And there's a specific episode called Lovers Rock. And there's a scene that takes place in Lovers Rock where there's sort of like they're having a house party essentially. And it's a beautiful, beautiful episode. And there's this scene where there's one character and they're dancing. And because it's depicting the sort of largely the Black Caribbean community at that time and all the injustices they were going through, they were very difficult time for Black people in the UK then. And what I took from that scene was that through this party, this sort of like release, they were dancing, and the dancing became so intense, like it wasn't even about the music anymore. It was kind of like just raw and almost spiritual, and just like a complete sort of like harking back to nature, just a full release when things are built that much and you just want to scream. And that's what I was building to with my film, and I just was inspired by that. And I thought, I think I need a scene like this. And also, before I wrote the script, I had a song in mind that was I would love to have had for the score, but obviously we couldn't get the rights to it. And it was a punk rock song by Ian Dury and the Blockheads from the 70s, maybe, I believe it was, mid-70s. And the song was called Black Male Man. And it was a bit of a play on the word, and it was a sort of it's a super interesting song, and it was just so filled with so much sort of anarchy and anger and passion. And I thought, I think we need to kind of hark back to that sort of period, so that sort of like ska punk period. And that's why when you find the characters at that point, there's no words to describe how they're feeling. There's just an understanding between them. And I just thought a dance sequence, the physicality, and just the expressiveness without words could be quite an interesting way to sort of like just show where these characters are, show them having their release, and see them carrying on.
Was it also a deliberate choice to set this crucial scene of the film in the woods? Because I feel like nature and the countryside is traditionally considered such a wide, kind of posh space. And for me, it kind of felt like you were reclaiming that space with this troubled Black young kid.
Yes, definitely 100%. And also back to when I was doing this job and mentoring a particular student, what was fascinating for me, I used to leave Birmingham city centre, the inner city, and I used to travel to a different area, which was very rural. And I always was just by me, my day leaving a big city and on the train and just the landscape changing, and all of a sudden you're in a whole different environment. Doing that on a daily basis, I loved it. It was fascinating, but also I wanted to get some of that in the film as well, the movement, the change. And yes, 100%, the forest was an integral part of the film. Like the city the train, the forest. They're all very integral parts that I think just kind of reflect where the characters are at in their journey. And yeah, there's something special about being in nature in a forest. It looks beautiful, it's raw, and I think I think it worked really well for the character's journey.
Yeah, I think that's clear. And talking about your journey, so you were a mentor, then you were an actor, now you're a writer, director. Is this where you wanted to be? And
is this where I want to be? Was that the question? Sorry.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. So yeah, 100%. So I've had quite an interesting step into the industry to where I am right now, which has been frustrating at many points, but I'm at peace with it is what it is. I wouldn't have made this film without spending 7 years, on my way to becoming a teacher or social worker. So it's quite interesting how life sort of comes back around into your art. But yeah, I'm where I want to be, or heading to where I want to be. My goal is to write and direct feature films and high-end TV, and I also want to continue acting, albeit separate from writing and directing. I love acting; it gives me a lot of pleasure. Yeah, I think it's a fantastic sort of creative outlet, and if possible, if it all comes together, I want to do both.
On that note, and this is my last question, what are you working on next? I read that you're developing another short film and a feature film.
Yes, correct. So I'm doing Hard to Reach as a feature film that's in development, and I'm also working on another short film that probably wouldn't be filmed until sort of like first quarter of next year, so 2024, and that's going to be very different to Hard to Reach. It'll be more of a absurdist dark comedy. So that's what I'm working on right now, early development on that. But in the interim, what my plan is to do is to try and film something low budget, something short, and something in a similar sort of space to Hard to Reach, but looking at it from a different angle and more of a visual piece. So that's something, if all goes to plan, might be shooting that later this year in November, December. So we'll see.
Right. I'm really curious to see your future work.
No, I'll definitely keep in touch.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And yeah, have a lovely day.
Thank you. You too. Absolute pleasure. Thank you. Bye-bye.